Hi, guys. I have had a very challenging and painful night, and I want to share this story with you guys because it's totally relevant to the things we talk about on this channel, and I'm sure some of you will relate to this. I'm just starting my day. I feel a little disheveled. I haven't even showered, but I wanted to start my day, get this off my chest, and then try to move forward with my day. So last night, I celebrated Halloween with some friends. We went out, we had a great time. And then those friends, straight friends, wanted to check out Twist, the local gay bar here in Miami. So we go to Twist. We're still having fun. We hung out for about an hour, and then my friends decided they wanted to go home. It was already very late, probably 1 or 2 in the morning. They were ready to go. I decided to stick around, and I ran into a new friend. So I'm talking to this new friend at the bar, and out the corner of my eye, I spot this guy in the distance. And I thought, wait a minute, that can't be who I think it is. Is that him? And you have those moments where you do a double take and you're like, somebody you haven't seen in a long time. Certain things look familiar and other things look different. You're like, no, no, that's not him. But wait, and then you do another look, and as they turn from a certain angle, you're like, I think that's him. And I don't know if you guys relate to this concept, but this has only happened to me a few times in life where I'm in a place like this at a bar, and it's like there's this spotlight effect. I don't know if someone like this has that effect anywhere they go, and everybody feels that about them, if it's like a unanimous, kind of like a celebrity or a star. You know how some people, like a Cindy Crawford or Naomi Campbell, like supermodels, are really, or like a Brad Pitt, right? There's some people who they just have such charisma and natural sort of, it's more than sex appeal, like an allure, that it's like your eyes go straight there and everything kind of disappears. I don't know if this guy just has that, or if it's we all have that. We all have specific kinds of people that have that effect on us. Meaning, like, maybe the people that I have this spotlight effect with wouldn't affect many of you, right? Or other people at the bar. But either way, my eyes go straight to him, and it was almost like this light is cast, and everybody else is sort of fading into the background. And then to add to this layer of, I think I know who this is, I think this is a guy from my past, just made things even more sort of eerie and interesting, but eerie and serendipitous. So I approach him to see if it's really him, and he turns around, and we lock eyes, and we have this moment of, it's you. Wow, it's you. This is a guy who I last saw 5 years ago, about 5 years ago. He came to my going away party when I left New York City. We weren't close. I'd only hung out with him a couple times. But, going away thing, it's like I invited all these people. Of course, only like 10 people showed up. So when only 10 people show up, it's actually very intimate. And he was the person that I knew the least. He came with his boyfriend at the time, who I had never met. So anyway, this guy, so the last time I saw him was 5 years ago when I lived in New York City. And I had met him probably 6 or 7 years ago at a bar, at a gay bar in New York City. There was definitely this raw physical attraction, but what's fantastic is when you have that and then you have these other things to connect on, right? So very intellectual guy, very educated, Ivy League graduate, just very, very intellectual. And sometimes you meet people who need that stimulation and they get like a high from it. I'm the same way. So there was that connection, but he's also Turkish. So there's, of course, that cultural connection for me. And so seeing him again was just very, very strange and very serendipitous because we're now in Miami, didn't stay in touch, lost touch. At the time when he had this boyfriend, I always made sure to respect that boundary, but I always had a crush on him. And I felt that he felt something towards me back then too, but similarly, he had a boyfriend, he was respecting that boundary. But there was something there all these years later. There's also something very, I don't know what the word is, maybe special about seeing somebody years later and you're both a different version of yourself, right? Like when I met him, I was in my mid-20s. I was a different person. I was, in every way in life, I was in a different place. Financially, professionally, physically even. And he mentioned that. He was like, you look great. I mean, you looked, and then he caught himself and he said, you look great then too, but you look really fit. You look healthy. Like, you know, you have a good, I don't know how I look right now. I'm a bit hungover and it was a long night and I slept like 4 hours, but it was kind of nice to feel a spark with somebody that I'm aware I'm in my prime right now. And I could tell that he is too. He was, again, beautiful guy, all these great qualities, but it was like we were meeting at an even more sort of, I don't know what the word is, optimal time for connection. And something happened last night. I don't know if, I mean, I was half naked because of my costume. I was Aladdin, but something was happening where we both kept getting a lot of attention. It's very hard to explain, but that spotlight effect that I mentioned, the rest of the night hanging out with him felt like now we're in this bubble together and people are kind of around and people kept stopping and approaching and being very tacky, by the way, that I'm clearly in the middle of an intimate conversation. We were speaking in Turkish and guys would approach to like try to get his attention. I'm like, these guys are so fucking tacky. And then at different points, guys were looking at me and trying to get my attention. Some guy grabbed my ass and I'm like, what is going on? I'm laser focused on this guy. But we talked about it and we talked about how this doesn't stimulate us anymore, like being at these gay bars or even apps. And he had confessed to me that he told me that he had opened Grindr while on this trip to Miami from New York and that he didn't even want to talk to anybody. He wasn't interested. He was like, I'm not interested in anybody here either. But obviously, we were interested in each other because we're having this moment. And we spent a few hours together. At one point I said, it's so loud here. Do you want to go somewhere else? And he said, yes. I brought him to this speakeasy in Miami. Speakeasies, of course, are quiet and intimate. And it was perfect. For the dynamic that we both like, it was perfect because we were actually able to talk about what we've been up to professionally and personally. And it was just nice and it was refreshing. But the whole time there was this undercurrent of an attraction. And it not just physical, it's an intellectual thing, it's a cultural thing. There was a bond. And it's somebody you used to know. It's somebody who knew a former version of yourself. So there's something to that as well. So there's one huge detail I haven't mentioned yet, which affects the rest of this story. He had a ring on his finger. And at one point he finally, I think I asked if he was still with the boyfriend, like whatever happened to that guy. And he said, oh, we're now best friends, but I'm engaged. So of course in my mind, I'm like, bummer, whatever. But he's like, I'm marrying a woman. I found this woman, this Turkish woman, and I'm going to figure it out. And I want to have kids and I want to have that traditional life. And this whole thing of meeting guys is now going to be a part of my past. In a sense, going to Twist and, hanging out here, it's kind of like the last chapter. I'm closing a chapter. So obviously, at hearing all this, I'm like heartbroken on many levels, right? I'm disappointed that this guy who I have this connection with, and there's a very obvious attraction, and we're spending now. It's been a few hours. We're spending together. There's something here. He's confessing to me that he's in love with a woman. And of course, the whole time I'm thinking, like, if you're that invested, you wouldn't be by yourself at a gay bar. Like, none of this is making logical sense to me. But the other element, of course, that's heartbreaking is this is yet another gay man convincing himself he's not gay, or at least he's bi, whatever. And he's trying to shut this part of himself down for whatever reason to fit into our culture, Turkish culture. And it was weird. The more he kept talking about it, it didn't really make full sense to me. He said it wasn't any pressure from his family. he had a boyfriend, who he introduced his family at one point. So, people are complicated though too. I recognize that even if there isn't a family pressure, it could just be a pressure from him that he feels he's not man enough if he's with other guys, or all this stuff is very complex and nuanced. But we got kicked out of the bar because they shut it down at like 4 in the morning. He said, I'm gonna go home. I have an early flight tomorrow. His hotel was about 5 blocks away, so I walked him home, and I really, really had to pee. So I came up to his room, I peed, I leave the bathroom, we're in his hotel room, and there's this awkward moment of, all right, I guess I'm gonna leave now. Of course, a part of me, by the way, I'm very intoxicated at this point. He's sober, he doesn't drink. And it's like, okay, now what? A part of me is wanting to stay feeling connected, right? Obviously, I'm also aware that's like morally not cool. He's partnered. He has a ring on his finger. Anyway, this is all like a split second, right? And it's a dance. You're like, okay, what do I do? Do I go in for a hug? What do I do? And he goes in for a kiss. He goes in for a kiss. It was a 5 to 10 second kiss. It was a great kiss. And then he pulls away and says, I can't do this. I drunkenly go in for another kiss and another kiss, and he acquiesces, but he's giving resistance. And so now there's this awkward moment of, you're giving me something, but you're also pushing me away, and it's so hurtful for that to happen. And me being emotional and me feeling in that moment, I guess, rejected, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean this is your past? This is always going to be there. And he, of course, is like, no, this is a really good test for me. And I'm like, did you even consider that maybe the fact that we met serendipitously like this again, do you realize maybe this is actually a sign that this is actually what you want? Like, we just spent hours together. And so I was trying to reason with somebody, right? In retrospect, now that I'm sober and it's the next day, I'm like, I was trying to rationalize with somebody who refuses to be rational about this. And really, it's not even about rationale, I guess, right? It's intuition, it's instinct. Why resist what you feel? It doesn't make sense to me. And I said something like, this is good for you to pick up on right now. When you're not married to this woman yet, 3 kids, married down the road, like, wake up, And in retrospect, it's also not my place to like be, play psychologist with this guy. But I couldn't help it. It was like word vomit. I just kept going and going, and and I said something kind of heavy. I said something like, you're repeating a legacy, a cultural legacy of a gay guy telling himself he's not gay, and like, you're repeating this pattern that's been happening for millennia, and like, don't you see it? Don't you get it? Like, I wanted to shake him. And of course, at the same time, I'm feeling now shame, and I'm feeling rejection, and it was a terrible feeling. And that was it. Then now it's like, there's nothing else to talk about there, so I'm ready to go, and he's like, don't leave it like this, give me a hug, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Fake hug. I leave, and he's like, be safe, have a good night. His voice is trailing off, and I just left. I just left the hotel room. I didn't look back at him. And I regret that. I regret not being the bigger person and sort of being not too emotional, but I just feel like I let my feelings take over. And I feel like in that situation, I probably would have had more power, been more effective with my delivery had I been a bit more stoic and matched his energy in that sense. Whatever, it's easy to regret, but I leave the hotel, right? And I feel so numb, and Twist is still like 5 blocks away. And my new friend is still there with another friend. So I go to see them, and that's one of those moments where you should probably just go home, but I felt so vulnerable that I was like, I just need to have another human here who I can talk to, right? So 4 a.m, drunk at a bar is at the best place for me to be in that situation. Not particularly, but in that moment, I needed a friend, right? And so I tell these two guys what just happened. And they were so drunk and so out of it. One of them in particular was so out of it that it was like talking to a wall. Like, in that moment, right, you just want to feel heard. You just want somebody to say, I get it. I get it. I see you. You're going to be okay, right? And the moment, right, with this guy, this whole night, the Turkish guy, it's very isolating to be rejected by a guy who is basically like, I don't want to do this anymore, be around guys and whatever, that whole game, the down low game, the discreet game, whatever we call it. That was painful enough, right? But now going to these two friends seeking, I guess, validation, or I don't know, even just seeking friendship, it felt like a double sort of sucker punch to the gut to seek that connection and safety, and you can't even, they're like too far gone. And it's interesting now that I'm realizing a theme for me, that it doesn't matter how much I drink, it doesn't matter how late it is, I'm still very present as a person, emotionally, intellectually, and I just felt so isolated. I'm looking around at this bar and everybody's wasted and everybody's like giving the eye, looking for somebody to come home with. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, how did I get here tonight? How did I get to this place? So again, all this shame and all this, just a shitty feeling. And that was it. That was it. I went home. The one good thing is, as I was walking home last night, I thought, I had this moment of self-awareness of, you're going to be okay. This sucks, but you're going to be fine. And you've been through things like this before. This is part of, again, to use that word, legacy, or what people call generational trauma, right? I feel like this is cultural trauma. As a gay person, it's not an uncommon experience to have a connection with somebody who's not emotionally available because they're not comfortable with their sexuality or whatever it is. But it's a very esoteric and specific and nuanced experience that not everybody can relate to, and it's just very painful. And walking home, I tried, and even today, this morning, looking at this beautiful weather outside, I'm like, your life is good. Like, you have a lot to be grateful for. These are all learning experiences. I'm not sure what the lesson is. I seem to consistently it's now becoming louder to me, clearer, and I just made a video about something similar recently. I feel like I keep attracting emotionally unavailable guys. Like, the guys that I'm really drawn to are not emotionally accessible. I was also thinking about this woman that he's supposedly going to get married to, and I thought, I can choose to see myself as like a victim of this paradigm as a gay person, this thing that many of us go through and relate to, but I'd rather know the truth and see what I'm dealing with than be like this woman and like so many women who are deceived. I even told him, I was like, even if you didn't have sex with anybody this trip or didn't meet me tonight, like, you went to a gay bar by yourself and this is like a secret for you. When you're getting married to a woman, like, the excitement of that relationship should be so fresh that you don't even have a desire to do this or to be here, but you came here, you wanted to come here because it's like a magnetic pull. This is what you actually want. And in retrospect, this was very wise that I said this, considering how intoxicated I was, but I said something like, you think the marriage and this relationship with this woman is going to distract you from this and pull you away. It's only going to amplify what's there, the undercurrent. Like, for you to still be attracted to this environment and to somebody like me when you're engaged, it's only going to become stronger once it's been, let's say, 5 years down the road of marriage. And it's so weird to me how it's obvious to me, all of this is obvious, but it was like right over his head, in one ear, out the other, because people hear what they want to hear, right? And they convince themselves of what they want to convince themselves of. I'm choosing despite this being a difficult experience and a painful experience, I'm choosing to see it as a lesson. And again, realizing it's too easy and it's lazy to view this as the gay victimhood thing. Him doing this and being this kind of person, it's also hurting another party. He's hurting himself, he's hurting me, but I'm replaceable. I could be any other guy. And there will be others, I'm sure, that he does this to. And this woman is also a symbol, right? She's one of many, many, many millions of women who this happens to, who, you know, she has to have an instinct that this, or eventually she will, if she doesn't yet, that this guy isn't fully invested in her and being authentic with her. So I'm still trying to figure out what the bigger lesson is for me. I feel like I need to just disengage in general from being around gay guys unless it's purely platonic, because I keep attracting these feelings of rejection and guys who aren't emotionally available, and it's very painful. So it makes me want to totally disengage for a while, but I'm also aware that that might not be the best solution, because I feel like that's how people then become numb, and they separate themselves from the world because they don't want to be hurt. And I don't want to be that person that puts up so many walls where he can't even connect with people. And it's a fear of mine, because I feel like the older I get, the more armor appears around me. And people can feel that, I think, when, even platonically, when you do meet people who want to connect with you deeper, they can feel when you have a fortress around you. So this is a very difficult thing to navigate, assessing who and when, what situations to be open to and to be vulnerable to, versus just for a while sort of keeping that part of you sealed off to prevent, to be honest, like this kind of trauma. Thanks for watching, guys. For my subscribers, thank you for supporting my channel and my content, and always your helpful and thoughtful feedback, and I'll catch you guys next time.